Welcome, traveler of twilight, and thank you for joining us tonight on Snooze Scholar, where knowledge gently tucks you in. As the noise of the day fades and the quiet of evening settles over you, let yourself be drawn into a world long forgotten, yet not entirely lost. Tonight, we'll journey together to a place shrouded in mystery and dusted in the golden hues of prehistory. A hill in southeastern Turkey that lay silent for millennia, cradling secrets beneath its sun-baked surface. This is Göbekli Tepe, a monument so ancient it predates writing, the wheel, pottery, and even the planting of crops. Stone circles that reach back over 11,000 years, carved by people who wandered the land, following the rhythms of the seasons, yet stopped here to build. Tonight, you'll learn how this sacred place was discovered, the marvels its stones reveal, and the enduring questions that echo through its silent walls. We'll explore the artistry and symbolism carved into limestone, the strange rites of skull veneration, and the gathering of the first great feasts known to humanity. So take a deep breath. Let it out slowly. Feel your body release tension and your mind open like a blank page at dusk. We begin now, where memory whispers through megaliths and starlight kisses stone. The accidental discovery that changed history. Let us begin not with the ancients, but with a quiet walk over stone. It was 1963, and the sun sat heavy in the sky above southeastern Turkey. A team of American and Turkish archaeologists surveyed the plateau, dry, beige, and silent. They found shards of limestone scattered like broken bones, and a few upright stones, T-shaped and wide-shouldered. But they assumed these were gravestones, modern, perhaps medieval. They noted the sight and moved on. For 30 years, nothing stirred. The wind passed over the hill, rain fell and dried, seasons turned. Then came Klaus Schmidt, a German archaeologist curious and persistent. He had read that report, and he felt something calling from the stones. When Schmidt arrived in 1994, he walked the land, crouched beside those T-shaped stones, and ran his fingers along their flanks. He knew. Soon he assembled a team and the digging began. Slowly, reverently, they brushed away soil. What rose from the earth astonished the world. The first enclosure, a circular, with walls of rough stone and 2 massive pillars at the center. Around the circle, more T-shaped pillars, carved, not plain, decorated with foxes and birds, snakes and lions. Radiocarbon dating stunned the team. 10th millennium BCE. This was not medieval. It was 11,500 years old. Older than the pyramids. Older than Stonehenge. Older than the invention of the wheel. And this wasn't a village. There were no hearths or homes, no fields or farms. This was something else. A sanctuary, a statement, a mystery carved in stone. Schmidt called it the first cathedral, and the world began to listen. The landscape of a lost Eden. Now, let us drift deeper, deeper into time, deeper into landscape. Close your eyes and picture the Anatolian plain more than 11,000 years ago, long before cities, before nations, before history was ever written down. It is not the arid, rocky land we see today. Back then, it was lush, fertile, teeming with life. Waves of tall grass ripple under a wind that smells of wild thyme. In the distance, dark green forests cluster near low streams, their banks soft with moss. Birdsong drifts across the air, and from over a low hill, a herd of aurochs, massive wild cattle, lumbers toward a watering hole. The land is generous. It offers nuts, berries, roots, and grains without needing to be planted. The trees are full of figs and almonds. The rivers glitter with fish. This was the Fertile Crescent, a cradle of possibility. A paradise for those who knew how to read the land. And into this abundance came the hunter-gatherers, not yet farmers, not yet builders of towns, but people deeply attuned to the patterns of the earth. They knew the timing of migrations. They followed the bloom of wild grains. They gathered what they needed, and they moved with the rhythm of the seasons. But something changed on this hill. These people, nomadic, flexible, self-sufficient, stopped. Not forever, not completely, but enough to leave behind something massive, something impossible. They gathered on this hilltop again and again, not for shelter, not for harvest, but to raise stone, to carve it, to stand it upright, to return again and again. What force pulled them here? What dream rooted itself in this soil long before agriculture? Perhaps we will never know, but the land tells us it was special, a beacon, a memory solidified in stone. The enclosures and their builders. Let us now walk among the stones, not just as observers, but as silent guests in a world shaped by patience, reverence, and human hands. Imagine cresting the gentle rise of the hill. The sun is low, casting elongated shadows across weathered ground. Below your feet lies not soil, but memory. And then, the first of the circles appears. The enclosures of Göbekli Tepe are not crude piles of rock. They are precise, deliberate, and monumental. Each is a circle or oval in shape, walls of limestone, rising up around standing stones, placed at regular intervals. The eye is drawn immediately to the center. Two tall T-shaped pillars stand face to face, like figures in conversation, or confrontation, or communion. These pillars, each weighing up to 10 tons, are carved from the bedrock nearby. No machines, no wheels, only stone tools and hundreds of hands. They are not just large, they are elegant. Their tops are broad, horizontal slabs, creating the T that echoes throughout the site. Some rise over 6 meters high. They dwarf the average human even today. The outer pillars, set into the circle's edge, form a perimeter of presence, a gathering of figures, all turned inward, watching the center, watching each other. Each pillar is set into a carefully fitted base, sometimes even into the bedrock itself. Beneath your feet may lie hidden pedestals, carved sockets, foundations deep and old. Stone benches line the interiors of some circles, perhaps for sitting, perhaps for ritual, perhaps for remembering. More than 20 circular enclosures have been detected by ground-penetrating radar, but only a handful have been excavated. The hill is still full of secrets. Beneath your feet may lie an even older story. These enclosures were not mere structures. They were stages, sanctuaries, symbols, built and rebuilt across centuries, layer upon layer of reverence. They invite us to ask, who were these builders, and what did they believe? In the next section, we'll step closer to the stones. We'll read their carvings, listen for the messages they left in animal and symbol, in shape and shadow. Carvings and symbolism. Stand before one of these towering stones now and look closely. The surface is not blank. It is alive with meaning. Carved in shallow relief are creatures of the wild, foxes leaping mid-motion, serpents coiling down the edges, vultures with wings outstretched, their eyes fixed on something unseen. There are boars, cranes, lions, and scorpions, not placed at random, but arranged with care, with storytelling intention. These animals were not merely decorative. They were messengers, symbols, perhaps guardians. Some believe they were totems, each animal representing a clan, a spirit, or a mythic power. Others suggest they were a form of language, a way to pass down stories before writing existed. One pillar shows a vulture standing beside a circle. Another shows a fox moving along the base. Their meanings are lost, but their presence is eternal. Even more haunting are the human elements. Arms carved down the sides of pillars, folded hands resting at the front. These aren't abstract blocks of stone, they're stylized human forms. Anthropomorphic monuments standing upright like sentinels. Some even wear belts with fox pelt pendants and loincloths. These details breathe personality into the stone. They may represent ancestors, deities, or mythical beings, known only to those who gathered here. Look deeper, and you'll find geometric motifs. H-shaped figures, net-like patterns, and swirling lines. Their meanings are uncertain, but they hint at a symbolic language. And so, each stone becomes a voice, a storyteller. And while we can no longer understand the full tale, we can feel its presence in the silence. Feasts and ritual gatherings, 40 to 48. Let your mind now wander to a different time of day, dusk on the hill. The last rays of sunlight stretch long over the stone, casting golden shadows across the dust. A fire crackles nearby. The smell of roasting meat fills the air. Smoke rises slowly, drifting over a circle of people gathered beneath the gaze of the great T-shaped pillars. These were not ordinary meals. They were feasts, vast communal gatherings where early humans came together to share not only food, but stories, ideas, rituals. Archaeologists have uncovered the bones of gazelle, aurochs, wild boar, thousands of bones, many bearing the marks of butchery and cooking. There were also massive stone vessels, basins carved with care, some large enough to hold dozens of liters of liquid. Residue found within suggests they may have held fermented beverages, primitive beer, or gruel brewed from wild grain. Imagine the murmurs of conversation, the soft rhythm of footsteps, the hiss of boiling water over fire. These gatherings likely served many purposes: celebration, mourning, negotiation, worship. Göbekli Tepe may have been a neutral ground, a spiritual hub where different clans or tribes met beneath shared symbols. And in the soft glow of torchlight, The animal carvings seemed to dance along the stone, the air thick with history, myth, and meaning. As we drift forward, we'll explore the deeper layers of belief behind these feasts, rituals that involved more than food, perhaps even the veneration of the dead. Skull cult and ancestral veneration. In the stillness of Göbekli Tepe, something darker, more intimate, emerges from the soil. Among the bones of feasts and the shattered remains of tools, archaeologists discovered something unexpected. Skulls, human skulls, carefully handled and intentionally modified. Some of the skulls bear deep vertical grooves carved into the bone. One had a drilled hole, another carried remnants of red ochre, as if it had been painted for display. This was not random. This was ritual. Evidence points toward a practice known as the skull cult, a form of ancestor veneration where the heads of the deceased were preserved, altered, and perhaps even revered. Imagine a small chamber, in its center a low altar. Upon it, a human skull rests, its surface marked with grooves and painted designs. A flicker of firelight dances across its crown. Nearby, perhaps, are other skulls, some belonging to family, some to elders, some to figures of myth. This was a world where the dead were not forgotten. They remained present. They were honored, remembered, even spoken to. It's possible that the head, to these early people, held the essence of the soul, the container of memory, wisdom, and identity. And so they kept it. Stone carvings from Göbekli Tepe reflect this idea. One pillar shows a headless figure. Another displays a human holding what appears to be a severed head. The theme returns again and again, quiet, eerie, consistent. Perhaps these rituals were part of mourning, or initiation, or marking the passage of seasons. But above all, they tell us that the people of Göbekli Tepe lived not only among each other, but among their dead. Village emergence and domestic transition. As the years passed, Göbekli Tepe began to change. What had started as a ceremonial sanctuary, used seasonally, visited with reverence, began to show signs of settlement. Beneath the sacred enclosures, archaeologists uncovered small rectangular buildings, aligned differently from the round ritual spaces. These were more modest in scale, with rough stone walls, shallow hearths, and the first hints of domestic life. Tools began to change. Ground stone tools appeared, grinders, pestles, mortars, used to process wild grain. Nearby, cisterns had been dug into bedrock, designed to collect and store precious rainwater. This suggests that people were staying longer, adapting the sacred hilltop to also meet practical needs. No longer only a place of gathering, Göbekli Tepe may have begun to transform into a village, a new kind of living. Imagine a family sleeping near the circle of stones, children laughing between the pillars during the day, firelight warming food beside ancient carvings at night. The line between ritual and residence was blurring. Perhaps this was humanity's earliest experiment with settled life, and from it, civilization began to stir. Burial of the sanctuary and its legacy. Then, slowly and deliberately, the people of Göbekli Tepe began to cover it, The pillars were not toppled, the walls were not torn down. Instead, the sacred spaces were filled in, stone by stone, layer by layer. Tons of debris, rubble, animal bones, tools, fragments of life were packed into the spaces between the pillars. Enclosures were sealed like tombs. This was not abandonment. It was something more ceremonial, something intentional. But why? Some believe it marked a spiritual transition, a ritual act of closure as new beliefs emerged or priorities shifted. Others suggest practical concerns. Perhaps the site was damaged by earthquake or erosion, and burying it was a form of preservation. Still others propose something more symbolic, that the age of the sanctuary had ended, and in burying it, the people honored its past while stepping into a new way of life. Whatever the reason, the act preserved Göbekli Tepe perfectly, like a message in a bottle from the Stone Age, waiting to be opened. And it would remain buried for thousands of years. The wind would pass overhead, grass would grow, civilizations would rise and fall, and then, at the turn of the 21st century, it would awaken. A memory rising from the earth, a whisper from the first architects of human meaning. Awakening the stone, spiritual reflections and speculation. Now that we have walked the sacred paths and traced the contours of the ancient hilltop, let us pause and reflect. There are no texts from Göbekli Tepe, no scrolls, no legends passed down in written form, and yet somehow its presence speaks louder than parchment. The very act of building here suggests a transformation, a pivot point in human thought. Before Göbekli Tepe, the world was wild. People followed it. They moved with its cycles. But here, on this hill, something began to change. The stones didn't just mark space. They created it. They claimed a sacred center where meaning was made and remade. Some believe these enclosures were aligned with celestial patterns, marking the stars, the sun, or the movements of time itself. A prehistoric observatory, a temple to the cosmos. Others wonder if the builders of Göbekli Tepe had early notions of divinity, forces of nature given face through foxes and cranes and serpents. Was this place a womb of early religion? Or was it something even more primal, a communal remembering of dreams? Theories grow like vines upon stone, but beneath them all lies one undeniable truth. They built it. They cut stone with stone. They raised monuments without wheels. They gathered, feasted, mourned, honored. And they did so not out of necessity, but devotion to something they could not name, but felt. Let that feeling now ripple softly through your chest. A warmth, a stillness, a connection. As you drift, imagine those first hands resting on stone. Imagine the rhythm of flint against rock, the low chant of workers, the shimmer of heat, the coolness of morning. And know deep down that you are part of the same story. You are the continuation of memory, a traveler of time. Rest now among the ancients. Sleep within the circle of stone, and let the sanctuary hold you. Part 3. Gentle conclusion and sign-off. As we near the end of our journey, let the story of Göbekli Tepe settle gently in your mind. We began on a quiet hill, dry and forgotten, where stones once whispered beneath the soil. We walked alongside archaeologists as the ancient earth peeled back its veil. We imagined the land as it once was, lush, fertile, and full of life. We traced the rise of great enclosures, their pillars standing still and silent in the dust of time. We read carvings etched by memory, animals, symbols, hands. We heard the echoes of feasts and the reverence for ancestors. And we watched as a sacred sanctuary became a home, and then returned to silence beneath a blanket of earth. Göbekli Tepe reminds us of something simple yet profound, that even in the earliest hours of humanity, we built things not just to survive, but to connect, to gather, to remember, to dream. So now, as your breath deepens and your body relaxes fully, let the weight of time cradle you. Let the stone circles revolve gently in your imagination, spinning like planets across the dark. Thank you for spending this quiet journey with Snooze Scholar, where knowledge gently tucks you in. More sleep-friendly journeys await, but for now, close your eyes. May your dreams be deep. May your spirit be still. May the stories of the ancients guide you softly into sleep. Good night.